Hello. I hope that the audio is okay. I got a new microphone. And so, oh god, it's that big. Got a new microphone, so we're going to work out some of the audio issues that sorry in advance. We have two new follows. Will that work? Does it repeat the alert? Dang it. I didn't even hear the sound. Okay. Well, we had two new follows from Nefast333 and Sandra Jolene. Actually, I think that Sandra Jolene is a friend from undergrad. We took a quantum class together. Um, I like just floating around the universe. Okay, so the reason I made the camera big is because I wanted to show you my sweatshirt. It says Smash Particles and Patriarchy. This was a sweatshirt I designed for a club that I was in. It's called Physicists for Inclusion in Science, and it was kind of what our Women in Physics Club transitioned into because not only are there more than just men. What's the mic not working? I can't get far away. Oh, okay. You can't tailor off. Okay, we got to stay loud. Um, so Physicists for Inclusion in Science was this club at my institution. It used to be Women in Physics because, I mean, you needed a club like that because there are so many men in physics. Uh, but we also recognized that that also was not as inclusive or intersectional enough. And so we broadened the club, which I thought was good. And I designed these sweatshirts for fundraising. This is a this is an electron simulation. Electron over here. These two are the electron trails, and this is a simulation of a Higgs collision in CMS detector. It's either CMS or Atlas. I don't remember which one. I never worked on either of those detectors for my time working CERN. Um. Anyway, so part of that club, we read a lot of journal articles and popular news articles all about like physics and the social the social state of the science because it was important to us. And it got so popular that our department actually allowed us to run it as a seminar course. And so for 2 years, I taught that seminar course. It was called Social Topics in Physics. And what we would do is anyone who was interested would give me ideas, or whoever was running the class ideas on what they wanted to talk about. And then the instructor, the facilitator for the seminar course, would go around and find different media which they assigned, uh, and we would read it and then come or listen to it. We listened to a lot of podcasts, watch some, and then we would come together and discuss it. And it would often lead to uh, what we wanted to talk about the next week. And it was really cool. And sorry, I just noticed that I am not completely centered, and it's given me a heckin' concern. Okay, that's better. Um, and it was a really fun course. Uh, it I don't know what's happening with it now. Um, I wasn't able to fulfill that responsibility. Like I had stepped away from the position, and then the COVID times happened, and so I don't really know where it's sitting right now. But it's something that I'm constantly interested in. Issues of social justice and equity in education are very important to me. And so what I wanted to do today, instead of talking about like actual physics, is talk about not physics the science, but like physics the culture, and physics the social aspects of what physics is and what it means to be a scientist, especially because I haven't really spent time looking at these topics since I was teaching that course a couple years ago. And so what I was planning on doing is just, let's start with the basics. Let's look up articles that are like diversity in physics. Especially because I might get a little cynical on this, so I'm gonna shrink myself. Um, so I might get a little cynical with this because a lot of the time, pushes for diversity within sciences, and within STEM fields in general are usually, it's a double-edged sword, right? So a lot of diversity initiatives in industry come from like these conflicting needs of wanting more people to participate, wanting more diverse ideas and backgrounds because that's how you're going to make better products, provide better services, come up with better ideas. But there's the cynical aspect of it where a lot of it's performative. And like you're diverse as a company because people want you to be, but like you don't actually care about the diversity within the field. It can get pretty cynical pretty fast. We have someone in chat. Hello. Logic. I don't know what that was in reference to. But anyway. So I just Googled uh diversity in physics because, like I said, this is not a topic that I have spent a lot of time with in the past couple years since I stopped teaching the social physics course. But let me hit the right thing. Let's look at what we got. Oh, wrong fella. Move my head. We'll be over here. So this is by sciencemag.org. There's a physics today. Let's look at the physics today, and we'll look at the science magazine because both of those are pretty popular pieces. Oh, gall. Okay, sorry. Side note, I watched a video today about Boston Dynamics' little puppy dog Spot, and it has a hook arm. No, it's very spooky, and it is not cute. Other people will tell you it's cute. It's very not okay. Anyway, robots are going to take over the world. Diversity problem. Okay, so the one from Science looks like it is actually about physics admissions, which is an even like bigger issue. I do like those videos. So, oh, and here we get to another issue, another social topic in physics. This is the capitalization of information. So, as you can see, I do not have full access to view this article. I can't learn about diversity problems in admissions of physics because I don't have a subscription. I also can pull it, but let's look at Physics Today because they're gonna let me read this. And it is more specific. This is a physics publication, not just a science publication. So this was published in, oh wow, this is old. This was published in 2006. Wow. I want this new one. I mean, it's not even that new. First page of this PDF article appears above. No, it doesn't. Where even do they talk about it? I can read the tiny, tiny, tiny print. Okay, whatever. Your BS. Okay. So this article is this old article from 2006. I wonder. Oh, okay. This is actually really cool. So this might be like 15 years old. Yeah, year 20. 20 aught. So this physics is notorious. Anyone who has taken a physics class or like probably knows this. I think it is only surpassed by computer science as a field with more men than women, or at least like the biggest gap. So this article is saying that in the early 2000s that only 22% of bachelor's degrees and 18% of PhDs in physics were awarded to women. And I think that that's really interesting, though, because that is an almost 100% conversion rate. So it looks like of the subset of women who are getting degrees in physics, same, the proportions are the same, which is very interesting to me. African Americans received 3% of physics bachelor's degrees and 2% of PhDs. Hispanic citizens 3% and 2%. So yeah, there's not a lot. This data is 15 years old, so this is a little bit old. I can try and find something a little bit newer. 2019.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, 19 is 2 years ago. Well, a year and a half. So this table is a list of doctorates in different fields. And the thing that I think is interesting here is like I said, when you look at the proportion of people in the field who are women, physics and computer science are the lowest. And yeah, they're just the worst in everything. Chemistry seems to be a lot more equitable. Engineering also, oh, never mind. That's an all. Just in the US. That's really interesting too, seeing who's getting PhDs inside the US and outside the US. But like math. Math is a field that is like lots of women get more women get PhDs in math than PhDs. And this is degrees granted to US citizens by race and ethnicity, again in the early 2000s. So 4%, 3%. Oh, you can't even see that. Let me zoom in. Hmm. Oh, maybe. Oh. So 87% of PhDs in physics go to white people. There are not That is not proportional at all, which is unfortunate. Women receive. Oh, this is cool. Okay. So this is the percentage of women receiving let me rephrase that. This is women who received pH as a percent of all a percent of all physics degrees earned. Oh, my Gunch podcast. Did you find the article? Oh, yes. Okay.
It's not the art.
No, this is what I like. Okay. This is actually really cool to look at. So, yay! This is exactly what I wanted to talk about. I was going to try to find an old paper I had of this, but this is great. This data is only like 2 years old. Sweet. Okay. So this is underrepresented minorities in physics as a proportion of all degrees awarded. And this includes African Americans, Hispanic Americans, American Indians, Alaskan Natives, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. Degrees awarded to temporary residents are included from calculations. So this is excluding non-US citizens. This is just US citizens. And it's fine. It's not fine. So you'll notice here that there's been like an increase. I don't know if this is like a trend that's going to continue, but there's an increase in the number of bachelor's degrees that have been awarded. But masters and PhDs have kind of stayed pretty stagnant. Not to say that like a 2% increase is, I don't know. Like, it's good. It's non-zero. It's definitely not proportional to the kinds of populations that actually exist. Okay. These are the two charts. These ones are the charts that are gonna hurt a little bit. So this is what I mean by like, even among the other sciences, physics is kind of not doing so hot. So let's again make this plot a little bit bigger. All right, so this plot is showing over the year of different STEM fields, what percentage of the degrees awarded were awarded to Black students. And it's particularly American Black students. So we've got a lot of, so this is the college age Black population, which is proportional about to the total Black population as a percentage of the US population. So, I mean, yeah. Anyway, the fact that all of these lines are not up here is showing that there is a discrepancy somewhere, that like college aged like Black people aren't getting degrees, particularly in these fields. Maybe they're not getting degrees at all, and there are lots of systemic issues as to why that is. But one of those is, particularly for these fields down here, is kind of the unfriendliness and inhospitable environments that these fields create. So physics is the red down here with 3%. 3% of bachelor's degrees that are awarded in physics go to Black students, where Black college age people make up 15 to 16% of the college age population. So this is wildly disproportionate. And you can see also that, like, math and chemistry and engineering, all of these fields are awarding more degrees to this particular underrepresented group. And that's what we mean by underrepresented, is that this is where the line should be in all these fields. All of these lines should be up here, but they're not. Yes. Yes. Okay. So, Brendan pointed out in chat, a good point to make is that 6% degree awardance to a minority physicists means that 94%, the rest of the degrees, were awarded to people in a different demographic, the majority demographic for physics, which would be white. We also have the same plot. This is the same plot structure, but it is Hispanic Americans. Oh, this is Hispanic and Latino students. Okay, so it's not just Hispanic Americans. This is a little bit more than that. And again, you can see none of these plots, none of these data are they're widely underrepresented. If we had a proportional amount of Latinx students who were graduating with physics degrees or any sort of STEM degree, then all of these lines should be proportional to the number of college-age Latinx people, but they're not. I do think it's very interesting, though, that this, like, the percentage range of degrees awarded for the Latinx students is very similar in range to what the degrees to Black students was. But I'm noticing on this plot there's a lot less variance. All of them have an upward trend, which is good. It means that more people from these communities are getting degrees in science fields. I don't know what happened in, like, 2010. This was Obama years, so yeah, maybe people started caring about, like, people getting degrees. Yeah, I'm gonna grab the link and we're gonna open this. Yes. Ooh, that's a very good one. But, like, compared to the other plot we just looked at, these are a lot more, like, tightly correlated. Like, all the STEM fields are going up for awarding degrees to Latinx students, which is good, and they're, like, not as spread out. Earth science and physics, though, it's because nobody likes rocks. JK, I like rocks. And biology was the top in the other plot as well. And this is just my own inference. I don't know. But I would guess that a lot of higher awardance of biology degrees correlates to people who are interested in going to med school. Like, pre-med degrees are considered biology degrees. So people want to be doctors, and that's good. We need doctors. That's also true. Brendan whispered in my ear that any field that is more represented or more proportionally represents women or even overrepresents women are more, what was the word used, elastic? Yeah, elastic to changes in demographics. So, like, more women get degrees in biology than in physics. And we're also seeing more Latinx and more Black students getting degrees in biology than in physics. Oh, no. And then, uh, so this is all, okay, again, this is the problem. This right here. This is saying of all the people in that age group, 35% of college-age people are from underrepresented groups. And they are underrepresented by at least 20%. So it's awesome that more people are getting bachelor's degrees. Percentage points. Yes. Percentage points, not just like a percent. And this is not a good look, science. This is not a good look, physics. Yeah. What other plots did we have? This one's interesting. This is by field. So we've got bachelor's in blue, red is master's, and green is PhD. And this is the degrees awarded to underrepresented minorities in a different field. So this is similar data, just presented in a different way. So people, it looks like underrepresented groups are getting their bachelor's and then being smart and not going to get their PhD. People who get their PhD are not very smart people. I learned that too late. But again, like, physics and astronomy are really low. Going to grad school, a good idea, Magic 8 Ball. Magic 8 Ball says without a doubt. Magic 8 Ball is a shill. But you know, physics is always behind the pack. Every single aggregate plot of STEM fields, it is always behind the... Oh, this one's my favorite. This one's my favorite plot. I love this plot because it hurts so much. Okay, so this represents all physics degrees, both PhDs and bachelors, awarded to different ethnic groups. You will notice that the white folk have a different scale. This goes up to 24%. All of the underrepresented groups are so underrepresented compared to like what percentage of the population they make up that they had to make an entirely different off the charts scale. This is garbage trash. This data is on the white scale. But I think this one more than the other plot that had the over time. This is a 5-year average, and guess what? These plots look identical to when I taught this course 3 years ago, so awesome. You will also notice this plot does a very good job of illustrating what overrepresented looks like. So overrepresented means that more white students or white college-age people make up just above 70% of the college-age population. But they are getting awarded 80% of physics degrees. So, like, they are overrepresented by 10 percentage points. Same thing with Asian students. And, like, showing plots like this can also be really tricky in the sense that, like, you show this to someone and it could immediately, like, set off whatever ingrained stereotypes they know or racism they know, like, oh yeah, I'm not going to repeat stereotypes or racism. But data like these can if you don't look at what is causing enrollment and graduation rates among different groups, if you don't actually analyze these systemic issues and just look at the data, at face value, you can run into some really problematic ideas, like, well, more white people are getting physics degrees because they're just better at physics. That is not true. That is 100% not true. Particularly white men. So I have this anecdote. My like mantra when I was an undergraduate and into getting my master's was, I want to be a mediocre female physicist. Because you don't see them. You don't see mediocre physicists who are, you don't see mediocre black physicists or Latinx physicists or mediocre women physicists. But you know who I see a lot of? Mediocre white male physicists. And like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, I want to be mediocre. That sounds great. But it's very challenging to be in an underrepresented group because you don't have any role models who are like realistic, right? All of the women who are physicists that I have encountered are hyper accomplished. They're way more accomplished than a lot of the like their male counterparts in the field. And yeah, Brendan and Austin are mediocre, but it's good. Like, we all are. And like, that's what I want. I want to be able to be mediocre because my women role models are like, got their physics PhDs at Berkeley and had 5.0s in their undergrad. Yes, that's a thing that you can do. And they're getting grant money and are like renowned in their field. And when that is the only thing that you can see, when that is the only type of representation that you have within the field, it's hard. It's hard to like feel like you have to live up to that. And so I just want to be mediocre. And then my dream is for like every woman who takes physics to be better than me because that's awesome. Okay, my CV is not okay. My CV might be 5 times longer than yours, but it is not because I've done more actual physics stuff. This is pointing out another issue, is that a lot of underrepresented groups are required to advocate for themselves. My CV is so long because I've spent time like volunteering my time to teach a class on social topics, right? Like, I've spent my time doing extracurricular work and doing social justice work within my department. And that's why my CV is long, is because I have to advocate for myself. I have to fight to get a spot at the table, and I have to fight for, other represented groups to get a spot at the table, which sucks. It's hard. I can't and I'm a white cis het passing person. Like, I don't have the intersection of identities that a lot of people I've worked with have, and they have had it a lot rougher than me. And it's hard. It's hard when the students that are here, the students that are getting awarded the degrees, they're the ones who are being asked, well, you just need to do like some more work so that more people join. And it's almost like it feels like it's the underrepresented group's responsibility to get these bars up to the black line instead of the white people or the men realizing that they need to be the ones making the space available for these bars to climb. Yeah, that's my favorite one. I have not looked at this plot before, and I'm interested to see what it is. This is bachelor's degrees. This is physics bachelor's degrees awarded to African American students at historically black colleges and universities. So, these are just raw numbers, so I have no context for this. So at all institutions, there are 4 years ago, 250 Black students got physics bachelors. And at Black colleges, 50 of those degrees came, so a fifth of all physics degrees awarded to Black students came from historically Black colleges. Yeah, that's one per program. That is one student per cohort per school in the United States. Cool. Although I might again point out, like I said, smart people don't go to grad school. Smart people probably also don't go into physics. So yeah, those are some interesting plots, and it was very, I'm not going to use the word fun. It was interesting looking back on those same plots with 3 years of new data. Because it's white people, men don't want responsibility. That's what Austin said in the chat. And yeah, that's true. I mean, nobody wants responsibility. It doesn't feel good. It feels good when you do a good job. Responsibility doesn't feel good when you do a bad job. Like, I'm responsible for my cat, and I like it when she wants to cuddle me. I don't like it when she barfs on the floor. Those are all sad plots. Okay. Don't do that one. This one. 211. Not the paper. Okay. 211. Here's another plot of full-time undergraduate enrollment among U.S. citizens and permanent residents by race and ethnicity. And this is from the National Science Board. National Science Foundation. This is the NSF. So this is like national and sciencey and founded. So, oh boy. Hey, look at this. We got the white scale again. We got this giant gap. This is the white scale again. Let's take a look at this a little closer. So, wow. Okay, I'm also, side note. Yeah, they just cut out 20 to 50%. It's just gone because, like we said, it's gonna be off the charts. A couple things I want to point out. One, they picked nice shapes for people who have like color blindness. This has nothing to do with the plot. It is a purely aesthetic choice. I don't understand why they picked this color. This little gray color is so bad and I can't see it. It needs to be like purple or pink or something. Because like you already have a blue and a green. Why give me a seafoam? That's just bad. Yes, but at least they did do shapes. Yep. 211. 211. Table 211? No. Figure 2. See, these are better colors. Like they added a pink. Oh, this is actually really good. So this is this is a plot of different degrees. And this is the number of bachelor's degrees being awarded in each field. This is not figure 211. We'll get to 211 in a second. So you can see that the physical sciences and math and statistics are way down here at the bottom. So those fields are not There could be a lot of explanations for this. Maybe there aren't as many jobs. Maybe these fields are seen as like really, really hard and not enjoyable, and smart people don't want to do them because they're smart and don't want to hurt themselves that way. I am not very smart. Um, but this is, also an issue. And you know what else? Okay, so biological sciences are pretty high. That's this one up here. And psychology is pretty high. Engineering is really high. It's very interesting to me though that like except biology, the we got what STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. So engineering's kind of high, biology's high, but like the science and math parts are like because they're not whatever reason would people not want to take a physics course? I don't know. Here's the plot. Oh, women as a share of bachelor's degrees. By field. Okay. So it looks like, oh boy, computer science and engineering. Look at that. Women. 80% of psychology degrees. 80% of psychology degrees go to women. And this is an example of like overrepresentation. More women get psychology degrees than men. And that's, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I am not in that field. I would be very interested to see what people in that field think of this statistic. Like, is this because men just aren't interested in the field? Is it because they feel pushed out? Is it because of like societal implications of like what it means to be a man and that it's like psychology is not a manly field? Which is weird because like a lot of the famous psychologists are all like historically have all been men. So like this is very interesting to me. Yeah, there is a lot of propaganda against what people call the soft sciences or social sciences. Um, and I will tell you, as someone who kind of bridges that gap, I got my master's in particle science, like high energy particle physics, and then I transitioned to working on physics education research. And qualitative research is hard. Qualitative research is really hard, and it is like the methodologies are so interesting, and like the mechanisms by which you classify your data and look at legitimacy, like it is a very rigorous field. And so when people say like soft science, or people say, oh well that's not like a real science, I'm like, you don't know what science is then. um just because like the subject material itself is more volatile. Like I can drop a pen on my desk and draw a free body diagram and do all the physics for that. Like that's easy. What about the psychology of a baby? Like that's not easy. People don't know what they're talking about. But yeah, computer science and engineering are very low in having women in them. Statistics and physical sciences and math are a little bit higher. And so of all of like the STEM fields, again, women are getting psychology degrees, women are getting biology degrees, because my inference there is that they're like pre-med. The majority. That counts as agriculture science too. I guess I do know quite a few women and femme people who are in like um horticulture and forestry and plant pathology. I had a friend um who's in getting their PhD in plant pathology, and like I know it's about diseases that plants can get, but I was always like, do you just like shrink your plants? Do you pathologize them? Do you talk to them? Anyway, yeah. And And then physical sciences are higher up than because physical sciences is going to include chemistry and physics and geology, astronomy. What else is physical? Biology is up here. Chemistry. Yeah, this is just like chemistry and physics. Rocks. We like rocks. Oh, hey, look. It's the white scale again. I hate this. This one goes from 12 to 60. What the heck? Um, this is just bachelor's degrees at all. This is just bachelor's degrees at all. So, that being said, um, share of bachelor's degrees among. So this is just holding, I guess.
They're not.
Um, yeah, they're not telling me.
Okay.
Either way, this plot is less. This plot is not great, but it's less egregious to me than some of the others because at least the number of like white people who have bachelor's degrees, it seems. Yeah, this actually implies that they're underrepresented, which is interesting. Did you just say good? Yeah, a little bit. Um, but this is more on par with how many white people there are in proportion. Um, hey, and look, again, around 2010, this is exactly what we saw in the other plot, is that the Latinx community is getting a lot more college degrees. Yay, that's great. This is not. Oh, science. This is in science and engineering. Okay, so I mean, the plots were probably all made from the same data anyway. Do y'all want to see a really disappointing paper? Just sort of DACA thing that happened in. I don't know. Maybe. Austin's pointing out in the chat that maybe there was some legislation regarding like DACA that happened in the early Obama years that allowed more more Latinx students to go to school. Um and again, like I mentioned earlier, diversity pushes can be good because they get more people in the room, but I am always going to be skeptical of a lot of diversity pushes, particularly from like corporate entities, because they seem to be for optics and not actually for like helping communities or trying to like dismantle oppressive structures. But also like do we all need to go to college? I've been going to college my whole life. I've earned my living being an educator. And so, like, it doesn't behoove me to say this. But, I mean, so many people are like, you told me get a degree, get a degree in a STEM field. And there's been a lot of pressure on that. And it's like, well, now what? We're not only are we in a pandemic right now and nobody like has jobs and stuff, but like what good are STEM degrees? What good is a college degree in a society that's like ours? Yeah. That being said, student loan forgiveness should be given to everyone right now. And and I've been on the other side of some of this stuff too, where it's like, how do you create an environment? How do you try and enculture a even just on a very local level, like how do you make your classroom, how do you make your department a place where underrepresented groups feel comfortable, where they're able to stay in the room and they don't feel pushed out and um they don't feel unwelcome. And it's hard, and persistence is hard. Like, I'm on a leave of absence right now from my school because it is hard. And particularly if you don't fit like this ideal. And I feel like physics has this more than other fields. If you're not the old white mediocre man, all about facts and logic and is inherently objective. See, this is another problem that I've seen when having a lot of conversations about opening the room up and making debate me right now. Yeah. Opening the room up and making it a more comfortable space for more people to exist in. A lot of pushback I've seen is even from people that I've interacted with who are very good scientists. They'll say, "Well, there can't be any bias in our recruitment mechanism. There can't be any bias in the exam we're administering. There's no bias because I'm an objective scientist. How could I be biased?" And it's like, I get where you're coming from. And it's hard to be confronted with the idea that like you aren't objective, particularly when a big part of your identity is structured around like being the objective scientist. This is why social sciences are important also, because a lot of those same people disregard human experience as valid data, and it is. Um, Human experience is very much valid data, but I don't know. I think Brendan and Austin have done a good job in their classes. I've seen them teach before. Um, and there are other people who I have either taught with or watched teach who are doing a good job um as like white masculine people in the field to try and make the room a little bit more comfortable, um and acknowledging that the environment is kind of not doesn't have the best rep. um Speaking of not a good rep, yeah, online teaching is hard. It's super hard to try and engage and make the room comfortable. I ran into one of my students at the grocery store. They were helping, like they were my cashier at the self checkout, and they checked my ID because I bought the new Two Town cider made out of like genetically perfected apples, and it is so delicious. Um, but they took my ID and saw it, and they went, "Maggie, wait, you taught me physics." And I looked at them and I was like, "Oh, I did." And they said, "Well, I've never seen you in person." And it like totally threw me for a loop because we've been teaching remotely for almost a whole year, and I realized like I graded this person's homework, I interacted with them multiple times a week. They were a great student, and like I knew them by their voice. Like I didn't know what they looked like. That was very bizarre. Austin got ID'd to buy a lighter? Excuse me? Wait, hold on. Can you not buy a lighter? You can't buy a lighter until you're 21? What? But, like, is it because it's explosive? Like, it. You can buy gasoline. Gasoline's flammable. I don't. Oh, it wasn't like a Bic lighter. What was it then? Were you buying a blowtorch? I mean, you can't buy Sudafed until you're 18, but that's because they don't want you making meth. I grew up in Utah, and so there's a lot of things that I didn't understand you could buy. Like, I thought you couldn't buy coffee until you were 18. Oh, yeah, like the long ones, the long lighters. I got a couple of those. Yeah, I didn't think you could buy coffee until you were 18, and then I saw Lilo and Stitch. And in Lilo and Stitch, Lilo gives Stitch a bottle full of coffee. And I was like, how did that little girl get coffee? She's a child. That's illegal. Because I thought that, like, coffee and alcohol, you had to be the same age to buy them. So. That's so weird. So weird that you have to be that old. Um, so Brendan linked this paper. This is a paper I've read a couple times. It's rough. So this is a very important paper, and it might be, like, if you are a physicist or you are in a physics department, this is the one paper that I would say you need to share with every physicist, everyone in your department that you can convince to read it. So, this was published by the American Physical Society in their Physical Review Education Research. Not that I would call this is like meta education research. This is not researching like actual education techniques or using educational theory, but any sort of social exploration within physics gets dumped into physics education, which in and of itself is not legitimized enough amongst most physicists, that's another can of worms. I guarantee you have to know quantum physics way better if you have to teach it and be a good educator with it. But whatevs. Okay, so this paper is specifically looking at sexual harassment reported by undergraduate female. And I'm gonna give a little bit of a content warning because this paper does talk about sexual harassment and gendered harassment. And so, like, it is a paper though, so like it's pretty straightforward and terse about things. It doesn't go into like any details or real testimonials of people who have been harassed or assaulted, but it does bring up some very uncomfortable statistics. So paper by all these cool people. So the abstract says sexual harassment. Oh, actually, y'all can't even see this. Let me zoom in. Okay. Sexual harassment occurs more frequently in male-dominated fields, and physics is a more male-dominated field than most other science, technology, engineering, or mathematics fields. Thus, it is important to examine the occurrence and impact of sexual harassment on women in physics. A survey of undergraduate women who attended a conference for undergraduate women in physics. That's a really good conference. It's called QWIP, Conference for Undergraduate Women in Physics, and it's delightful. I've been a couple times. A survey of undergraduate women who attended the conference revealed that approximately 74% have experienced at least one type of sexual harassment. This sample was recruited from a large fraction of undergraduate women in the United States. We find certain types of sexual harassment predict negative sense of belonging and exacerbate imposter phenomenon. Wow, who'd have thunk? Types of sexual harassment that predict these outcomes, both forms of gender harassment, while seemingly less severe than other types of harassment, have been found to have substantially negative personal and professional consequences. These findings are important since prior work has found that sense of belonging and imposter phenomenon are related to students' persistence in STEM fields. Okay, so that was a lot of science speak to saying women don't stay in STEM fields because of imposter syndrome and they don't feel like they belong. We, in this paper, have discovered that being sexually harassed is a big reason why these people don't feel like they belong. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Austin, have you never read this paper? This is a rough time. So 75% of Oh, okay, yeah. 75%. 75% have experienced at least one type of the three harassments that they talk about. Our results have implications for understanding and improving persistence in physics by informing a community about the occurrence of sexual harassment and its effects so that we begin to work towards reducing its occurrence and mitigating its effects. So I've got a lot of like strong opinions about sexual harassment in the workplace and how it's handled. I always get a little cynical about sexual harassment trainings and stuff because they tend to demonstrate to harassers and abusers where the legal line is, and then they will go up to that line as close as they can. Which doesn't mean they're not harassing people. It just means that they're not harassing people bad enough to get in trouble. Anyway. So, okay. Austin says he's ashamed to be part of the group that causes this. Yeah, half of the talk is like, is this harassment? That harassment? That can't be sexual. That can't be sexual harassment. It's supposed to be sexy. Is mayonnaise an instrument? Yeah. Don't feel bad. See, something like this, I don't know. As a woman who's been sexually harassed and assaulted in professional settings, I don't feel like men or masculine people in the field need to feel bad for it. They need to just like call it out when it happens or like have zero tolerance. Also, men are not the only people who can be sexual assaulters. Anyway, so sexual harassment is a form of gender discrimination. Sexual harassment research shows that women in male-dominated fields are more likely to be sexually harassed, and that these experiences increase job turnover. So people don't like working in places where they get harassed. Imagine that. Okay, so in this paper, they talk about the background of that sexual harassment is both a legal term, and that's what I was talking about having a hard time with, is that it is like legally codified, and so people find loopholes, like anything that's, written into anything that's litigated. But it's also a psychological construct to describe a continuum of behaviors. Sexual harassment is a form of gender discrimination, illegal under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Sexual harassment is illegal when it is frequent or severe enough to create a hostile working environment. Isolated incidents or offhand comments are not illegal. Okay, so this is the important part. Sexual harassment encompasses three distinct but related dimensions. There's sexual coercion, unwanted sexual attention, and gender harassment. So sexual coercion is when sexual coercion is like the most extreme case of this, where you're when a job, I'll just read what they said. When a job or educational outcome is dependent on a target performing or allowing some sort of sexual act. So this is like exchanging sexual favors or being asked to give sexual favors in exchange for a raise at work, a good grade on a paper. Like this is the stuff that is absolutely seen bad. No, do it because it is bad. No. Don't sexually coerce anyone. That's called rape. Anyway, we stand consent here. Then there is kind of in like the less extreme, less illegal, more gray area, we have both unwanted sexual attention, which is characterized as the paper says come-ons. These are unwanted sexually motivated attention. And then we also have gender harassment, which is the paper describes as put downs. These are like sexist comments. And those two, like unwanted sexual attention and harassment, are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Both can exist at the time, but there is something different about like you can't be a physicist because you're a dumb girl. That's sexual harassment based on your sex. But there's also, hey, you want to study with me later because you're really hot. That is unwanted sexual attention and is also harassment and makes like they both make the work environment not friendly. Dimensions overlap. Talked about that. Okay. Research on sexual harassment further separates gender harassment into two categories: sexist and sexual. Oh, okay. So I was wrong. I jumped ahead of myself. Negative gender-based attitudes. Okay. This is interesting. So this is just like a side statistic, not done in this study, but a survey of nearly 500 astronomers and planetary scientists found that 18% of women of color and 12% of white women skipped professional events because they did not feel safe. So when 10 to 20% of women in your field, which they already don't make up a very big proportion of your field, don't come to conferences because they don't feel safe to go to conferences, like that's a problem. That means that not only are you as a field missing out on the contributions of these scientists, but you're also like preventing them from networking and sharing. All sorts of bad. Two important antecedents for sexual harassment are organizational climate and male domination. An organizational climate that communicates a tolerance of sexual harassment is a work environment that meets at least one of the three following criteria. The organization does not take the victim's complaints seriously. The organization does not protect victims from retaliation, or the organization fails to sanction perpetrators. Yeah. And if you ask people who have been sexually harassed or who and did not report, or people who have been sexually harassed and did report, how seriously their complaint was taken is something that they will probably be willing to share with you because it's upsetting. Um, Physics is male dominated in all three senses of the definition of male domination. There are strong negative stereotypes about women. Yep. Oh boy. Okay, so then the paper, after defining sexual harassment, they talk about how they're going to define sense of belonging, particularly within an academic discipline. And what was... Okay, so they define it as the extent to which a person believes they are valued, accepted, and a legitimate member of the field. If anyone's ever experienced imposter syndrome, that is a version of not feeling like you belong in the field. Like that bio professor that was slap-assing a grad student at that professor's own wedding to a different graduate student. Yeah, so a professor that I know of got married to one of his graduate students. Not in my department. This was not a physicist. I think they're a biophysicist. Anyway, somebody saw them slap the ass of another graduate student at a wedding. At his wedding to another graduate student, but not the same one that he slap-assed. Anyway, moving on. People who don't feel like they belong are more likely to switch their major. Also imagine that. Like, you know, attitudes like that, though, like the fact that a paper has to say this, like, feeling like you don't belong is going to lead to you leaving. It seems kind of like a no duh, but it's really important because there are a lot of scientists who will be like, well, if you really loved the science, then you would just stay and do the science and the atmosphere wouldn't matter. I'm like, that's some elitist garbage. Yeah, just be better at not being harassed. Women's perception of the environment's impact on their sense of belonging in math environments that convey math as an innate skill, or negative stereotypes about women's ability in math lowered women's sense of belonging in math and thus their desire to pursue math. Again, these feel like no-brainers. This ties into what I was saying earlier about you could look at these plots and have a bunch of really not good takes based off just the data. You could look and say, oh, well, there aren't women in math because women are bad at the maths, instead of looking at, you know, the causes for women not liking math. But that's too hard and requires people in power to admit that the structures that helped them are not actually just or equitable or good. Hello, kitty. Did you wake up from your nap? Come here. We might have a visitor. Women earn 40% of bachelor's degrees in mathematics and statistics, approximately double the percentage of women earning degrees in physics. Kitty cat. So, yeah. Disciples where innate brilliance is considered the main criteria for success, such as physics, tend to have fewer women because of stereotypes that women lack such talent. Okay, this is actually really a problem, and there's another paper that we can explore that specifically has to do with different fields' perception of brilliance and who goes into those fields. It is fascinating. Brendan is furiously typing. You don't have to find it right now. We can do it next week. But it's a very interesting study that shows that there's a correlation between fields where professionals within that field think you have to be smart to be in the field and the types of people who actually are in that field. Yeah. I got a kitty cat. Show off your cuteness. Show off. Okay, we don't have to look down there anymore. And don't rub on the microphone, kitty. You can purr into it. Expectations of brilliance underlie disruptions, gender disruptions across disciplines. Okay, so these plots. Okay. So let me explain what these axes are for a hot minute. The bottom axis is no, we're not gonna look at the second plot. We're only gonna look at plot A. The second plot has to do with the GRE, which standardized tests are bullshit, and I will go to my grave saying that. So this plot on this side is showing the where can I not? Oh. Okay. You know what? Let's do this. Let's view image. Okay. So this side of the plot, the bottom is field specific ability beliefs. And so this was I wrote this paper before. This metric is within the field. They asked professionals, people with PhDs in astronomy, for example, how much innate talent do you have to be an astronomer? Like, is that really important? Or can you like work hard and learn to be an astronomer? And so that's what field specific ability belief is, where a high number means you have to have a lot of innate ability. Like, it's just baked into who you are as a person. And low means that like you could learn how to be good at that field. And then the top, the vertical axis is what percentage of PhDs in that field belong to women. And so you will see that education is up here. So this means that more women have PhDs in education, and that education professionals don't think you have to like have an innate talent to be good at that field. I picked education on purpose because they have a growth mindset. Like, that's literally what education theory is how to learn. So of course they believe that anyone could learn how to teach, because that's education. And then you have other fields like psychology. Psychology is also another female-dominated field, and they also believe that you aren't born a gifted psychologist. Like, that's something that you could learn to do. So they've got like a regression line. So like neuroscientists, they're like, yeah, that's about 50% men, 50% women, and yeah, like you gotta be kind of good, but it's not the most important thing in the field. And then we get down here. These are the fields where it is really, really, really important, according to the field itself, that you be naturally gifted. You can't read this one, but this is philosophy, and that does not surprise me at all, because philosophers are up their own ass. Can you learn to be a good philosopher? Not according to philosophists. Math is also one where it's like you kind of just have to have the talent. People in the field think you just gotta be good at math to be good at math. And like, I don't know. I think there is something to be said about some of these fields where like, there used to be a joke in my undergrad that like, if you didn't have a unique proof by the time you were 35 as a mathematician and then hadn't killed yourself by the time you were 40, you weren't really a mathematician. because like, yeah, it's not a good thing. But like there's, I don't know. I think, I don't know, a lot of people who produce really good works have, they might have things going on in their head. I don't know. Oh, someone posted this on Facebook today. Should I click this? Am I going to get TOS, Austin? Oh, sexual harassment. Oh, criminal sexual misconduct. Oh, that's bad. That's a big bad. Um, against a computer science and engineering professor. Oh boy, 13-year-old. Okay, yeah, I don't want to read that on stream. It happens. It also happens with like really, um, really prominent scientists like Neil deGrasse Tyson got in trouble for sexual harassment. And sorry, I said a bad word. What's his name? Lawrence. No, Lawrence. What's his name? Lawrence physicist. Lawrence Krauss. He's also a piece of, not Ernst Lawrence. Lawrence Krauss. This guy's also kind of a piece of shit, and I am gonna say that, because he sexually assaulted people at conferences. Very prominent physicist. He's written a lot of like popular physics books. Anyway, but you'll notice that physics is down here. There is no field that has less PhDs for women out of all of the fields on here than physics. And physics is, except for math and philosophy and maybe literature, has very strong field specific ability beliefs. Rate my professor is really high. Rate my professor is a joke. Yeah, Your Honor, his rate my professor scores high. He can't be a criminal. And I've actually seen this. There are versions of this plot, this field specific ability belief plot, and like different papers who have used it. There's one that has more fields on it. This has a lot of science fields. But one that's really interesting is the data point for music composition. I don't remember where it falls in regards to number of women in the field, but music composition is like way high up there. Like you have to be born, according to musicians, you have to be born musical. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I kind of get that. I'm not very musical. Someone found a twist tie and she's running around with it. She found a twist tie. Yeah, so field specific ability belief is a really interesting thing, particularly that it has this correlation that male dominated fields, like that's what this line is showing, is that the more male dominated a field is, the more that people in that field think that you have to be good at the field innately. And like one could draw a couple conclusions from that, like men want to validate themselves and think that they're doing what they're doing because they're naturally smart at it and that no one else could do it because they're not smart enough. Or maybe like maybe women dominated fields are just like chill. I don't know. Back to the paper. So there are research questions that they were asking because in qualitative research, you'd have to have very specific research questions, just like you do in quantitative research. But they were asking, to what extent do female undergraduates experience sexual harassment? To what extent does experiencing sexual harassment correspond to their negative sense of belonging? And to what extent does experiencing sexual harassment of different forms correspond to imposter syndrome or imposter phenomena? They recruited participants that were attending the APS conference, QWIP, in 2017. So this paper isn't that old. So there were 1,500 attendees, nearly 1,400 of them reported being female. And they only performed this on undergraduate females. Self-reported. One thing, if I'm remembering correctly, that this paper does not bring up is that and is something that I think would be really good for a further study. I don't think they asked like gender identity, and so, or like they just asked, are you male or female? So this is only really capturing self-identified female, and is probably might be losing some valuable data on how non-binary people are harassed, or if asking, like, I'd be very interested to see what this study would look like if they allowed people to identify as like a cis woman or a trans woman, and if the like harassment is different. I bet it would be, which is super shitty. Okay, so these were the survey items they used. And again, like, qualitative research is really weird, but it's super cool. So what they did is they had a tool, which was their survey, and their survey was asked questions to the people, and then those questions were coded by the researchers to account for different variables. So for example, while in a context associated with physics, someone made sexual remarks or told inappropriate jokes or stories. So like that would have been one question on the survey, and then the participant would have to like circle like often, not often. But what that question is really asking is, did you experience sexual gender harassment? You don't just ask, have you experienced sexual harassment? And this paper actually shows that a lot of students didn't even know that they had experienced sexual harassment. But they had been maybe in a physics study room and someone made a sexual comment about their body. So sexual gender harassment was inappropriate jokes, sexual comments or tones about body appearance, clothing, discussing your sexual activity. Gender harassment included questions of making sexist remarks, treating you differently, ignoring you, or putting you down because of your sex or gender. Okay, so here they're acknowledging that like there's sex and gender. Unwanted sexual attention, so someone asking you out, touching you without permission. Guess what? I've seen all of these happen in my department. I've had not all of these happen to me specifically, but I've seen all of these happen. And my department's pretty cool, so. Okay. So half of the attendees, just under half the attendees, were in their first or second year of their undergrad. The other 60% were in their sophomore or higher year. 73% of the participants were white women. And the rest were underrepresented groups. Okay, so this is something interesting the paper's pointing out too. So they had 21, they had like 23% of the participants were from underrepresented like ethnic and racial groups. And so they're pointing out that these percentages are above 12%, which is historically the number or the percentage of female students who are also from other underrepresented groups. Meaning that they oversampled. That just means that, like, there were a lot of non-white women physicists at this conference, and they asked them the survey questions. Here's something else cool. The mean GPA for respondents was a 3.5 with a 0.48 standard deviation. That means that the majority of these women were between a 3.0 and a 4.0 GPA. These are good students. These aren't mediocre male physicists. I'm going to get lambasted for saying that, but I don't care. And I mean, you could also think about who are the types of people who are going to be attending conferences like this. You know, they might be the people who are nerds who like physics. Okay, so this is like an actual sample from the survey they asked. With respect to a physics community, to what extent do you feel alone or isolated? Very much, not very much. And so these questions would be looking for data points of not belonging, because this study was particularly correlating the sexual harassment and the sense of non-belonging in the same survey. Okay, so they're just talking about how, talking about their methods and their tool, and then the outcomes. Okay, so this is what is real interesting. I'm just going to go to the table because the table is the most interesting part to me. Okay, so this is the combined percentages of gender harassment, sexual or sexist, unwanted sexual attention, and so 25.7% had a no across. They had not experienced any sort of sexual harassment or unwanted sexual attention. And 20% had experienced all three. They had experienced sexist comments, they had experienced sexual comments, and unwanted sexual attention. So a fifth of women experienced all three. A quarter of women experienced all but unwanted sexual attention. And then the other, 20 fifths to 2/5 experienced some combination of sexist harassment and others. So I think that this is really, really upsetting. Because not only did a fifth of women experience all three types, but that if you only experienced one, the one that you experienced was the sexist harassment, which is like directly related to people around you not thinking that you can be accomplished because of your gender. I'm sure that there's a very interesting story in this data that 1% of respondents only experienced unwanted sexual attention, but not any of the others. That's an interesting data point. But like, this is not okay. This is not a good look. And actually, is it? Okay, so they're just talking about predictors. I wanted to see, I remember them talking about how people didn't recognize. Oh, here it is. Is this it? So, sexist gender. So, 68% experience sexist gendered harassment, 51% experienced sexual harassment, and 24% experienced unwanted sexual attention. So, yeah, that's a yikes. So then they looked at imposter syndrome and feeling like you belonged. These tables are them looking at different control values and how like the tools, like for this, these are given number values, and then what the respondent picks, that number value is then codified to represent like some data, and then they do like p-values and stuff on it. Okay, so success to ability. Where's the thing that I want to talk about? Discussion. Okay, so basically they ended up finding out, did they not have any other? Okay, so what they did is they found out that those who had experienced sexual harassment or unwanted sexual attention were scoring higher in categories for not feeling like they belonged or could be successful in the field. Okay, so this is also cool because this is extending it to non-physics field. Meta-analysis of sexual harassment research in academia found that an incident rate of 56%, second only to the military, which has an incident rate of 69%, and that is not nice. And yeah, like the military is notorious for having lots of sexual harassment, and it's not cool. 1/4 of our respondents experienced no harassment in physics, similar to approximately 1/4 of military women experiencing no harassment in the military, but that was a study in 95. Less than female faculty and staff at a large Midwestern university. Undergraduate women. Oh, yeah. Okay, so the LGBT climate survey in physics is really cool. I'm going to talk about that next week. It's a really good thing. This is a report that went very specifically into the things I was wondering about earlier, with how people that are not cis or not straight experience harassment in physics. The rate was higher for gender non. Yep. Well, there it is. There it is. There's the thing I was wondering. And it sucks. Okay, so negative sense of belonging. Sexist gender harassment was the most frequent type of harassment. And supported broader feelings. Okay, so yeah, they just found out that people who were harassed felt like they didn't belong. and they felt like imposters in the field. Is there anything else additional about? Oh yeah, so they talk about moving forward, and I do not envy who wrote this, Lauren Aycock and her colleagues, because writing this part sucks. Because if you do any sort of analysis like this, you are going to be asked, well, how do you solve it? How do we fix it? And our department actually even had Lauren Aycock, the primary author on this paper, come and give a colloquia to our department. And, you know, I might not be remembering correctly, but I feel like someone asked her, like, well, so what do we do? And she's like, I don't know. I did the study. I found out what's happening. I don't know how to fix it. And honestly, like, I don't think it shouldn't be the job of people who are being victimized to fix it. Like, that's just extra work. Like having to work in a hostile environment, having to deal with the trauma of being harassed or assaulted, and, you know, perpetually being in an environment that is hostile to you, and then being asked to be the one who makes it better. Like, that's too much. That's too much to ask. So their ideas for helping, yes, creating and using mechanisms for swift justice towards perpetrators. Having leaders take these concerns seriously and that are effective at their jobs. Hiring diverse women and gendered minorities at faculty at all levels. Physics department's research group should also consider publicizing professional codes of conduct and identifying and promoting positive behaviors to increase collaboration. These are all excellent. Codes of conduct should be tied to extra legal processes to handle breaches of conduct. This is also very good. This is something that I would suggest anyone do in their class. Like, you set up, have your students like help you write a code of conduct at the beginning, like first day of class. And did the cat toot? The cat tooted and is tanky. But like, you should have an environment of accountability. Prioritize reintegration and needs of the victim rather than rehabilitating the perpetrator. Okay, this is the one sentence. This would solve the problems. Because so many times, in so many instances, I've seen where the needs of the victim are not prioritized over the needs of the perpetrator. And this is what leads to not only a continued hostile environment, but it also leads to other women not, or other people just in general, not being willing to share. I'm reminded of an incident in my department, again, speaking from my own experience, of, you know, a couple students who were being harassed in a class that I was teaching. And it was uncomfortable. But the fact that it was happening to multiple women in the class, and like knowing that they weren't alone, felt bad, but also felt like, oh, I'm not the only one experiencing this, and that like gave them a sense of validity in being able to like try and report what was happening. These situations are also really tricky too, because you have, like, in academia, you have power structures, right? So like if it is a professor sexually harassing a student, that's not good. That's very bad. How do you deal with that? If it's a student sexually harassing another student, if it's a student sexually harassing, the instructor of their course, how do you navigate that? Like, how do you navigate students' rights versus like the right to not be sexually harassed? Right? Like, I have a colleague who was aggressively harassed by a student that she had in a late night evening lab. And like, it was not appropriate conduct. He was like following her and doing very not okay things. And she reported it. But, well, we can't tell the student to leave your class. We can't make him change the course he's registered in. And then she's like, well, could I like teach a different section then? Because I don't want to teach this student. Well, no, I don't know if we can switch, like if someone's willing to, I guess. And like it was handled very poorly. I think she ended up having like her boyfriend come and just sit with her in the classroom because she taught a lab that went from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night. But it's like she should never have been put in that situation at all. At all. And again, this goes back to like, well, if it's not like the legal definition. Ugh, I hate it. This is just reminding me of all of the bad things. This is all sorts of bad stuff. This is just their data. Okay, here's just some more specific data. This is how many students experienced each, like, checked these survey items, never once, twice, more than twice. And then all of their references, which are great and probably also very depressing. And on that happy note, I think I'm gonna sign off of Juno. Oh. Yeah. Okay. Let her go. She's mad. She's very mad, and that was caught on. All right. Yeah. So that was a social topics in physics evening. I'm fine. I'm very fine. She's just spicy. She's very spicy. She's got strong paws. Could be a boxer. Anyway,